All right, everyone, thanks for joining us today. We have a special guest with us here, Nick Clemens, who will be showing you how to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to style your reports. If you have any questions, we'll be monitoring chat and Q&A as they come in. So please ask us questions, and if you need any help, we're here. Okay, Nick, take it away.
Okay. So just to start, I am not going to cover a lot of the actual writing of reports. We're going to assume that you understand how to write a basic SQL report and can do that. And this is going to be more about adding a little bit of fanciness to your reports. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have just 3 reports in my system. We're mostly going to be focusing on this number 2. I'm going to go ahead and run it just so you can see what it does. So it takes a collection code. It's going to give us a list of patrons who have books out that match those collection codes. It's a very basic report, and you can see a lot of the information here is repeated multiple times because I wanted to show you different ways of kind of doing the things that I'm going to talk about. So we'll jump right in. And if you saw Andrew's presentation during Kohathon, I think he covered a lot of the same stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about. The first thing we can do, and I'm going to go ahead and open the results in a second window, just so we can compare. Just looking at this first field, this is just a concat of the first name and the surname. Concat is the big thing that you're going to use for all of this. Concat simply takes 2 strings and smushes them together to form one string in your report results. So right here, all we do is we concat. We have first name, a comma, which says we're going to concat the next thing. The next string is just a space. Without that, our first name and surname would be all smushed together. Surname, and then asbar. Ooh, don't mess up the report. Asbar, or that just renames it so that the top of the column looks neat. If I get rid of that, just to show you. Then we see all of this kind of code that we've put in there on the top of the report. Generally not helpful. So it's good once you start doing this to go ahead and rename it. So once we've renamed it, now the column's there. And that's sort of the starting point, is really with that concat. Over here, so what we're doing in this report, we get a list of borrowers, and then we have a list of their checkouts here. And again, this is a real simple concat. It's just, that's why I call it barcode simple. It's just a group concat. So that's more about the way SQL works. I'm not going to get too deep into that. But the second thing we can do, rather than just doing a group concat, we can do a group concat and specify the separator. When we don't specify the separator, we get commas between all of them. When I specify the separator, I specified it as space pipe space, which just kind of spreads out the barcodes a little bit and gives us a little bit nicer. You can put whatever you want in here. You could actually put the word, you could put the word barcode. If we do that, refresh the link here, we get barcode between them all. Now that doesn't cover the first one, so it's not the best maybe, but it sort of does what we can need it to do. So I'm going to change that back to something a little more readable. So we go from simple, a little bit more fancy. We can get a little bit fancier next. And this is one of the nice things to do is we just separated these with a little bit of HTML, and it's just a new line, just a break in the page. All we had to do was put in that separator there. It's going to take that HTML code and read it and interpret it, so that what we actually do is we get each barcode on its own line. Just stripes on the tie, Donna, by the way, checking the chat. So it gives us all on one line, which is just a readability thing. Now you notice the next one here, I have gotten a little bit fancier, but I'm not going to quite jump to that one yet. I'm going to start over here. I'm going to go back to the borrower link. So again, you saw in the beginning, we did concat first name, surname as borrower. That just gives us their name. If we want to get a little fancier, what this one is actually is a lot of is there, is a link to the patron's account, which is a handy thing to have in the reports. You pull up the information, you see who has things checked out. Now you kind of want to look at that patron in detail. So all this is really is when you're on a patron, if you note at the top, you have this link up here, CGI bin, Koha, members, more member, borrower number. This borrower number is probably the important part of this. Otherwise, this is just kind of the Perl script that we're using. This borrower number is the parameter that tells us specifically we want to see Edna's account. So if we go back over here, and I'll keep making this a little bigger just to try and make it easy for you all to read.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. This is the line right here. So all we've done here is taken that same concat of the borrower's first name and surname and wrapped it in an HTML link. Now we have to get a little bit tricky here because we have a break in this link to insert the borrower number. So we have the whole link wrapped in single quotes, you'll notice. And then within that, there's a double quote. Double quotes don't affect the quoting within a single quote. You also have the option of escaping them, but that confuses me. So I like to do it this way. This is just kind of that start of this link over here. Then the borrower number, and then we break the HTML, put the first name, surname, just as you saw up there, and end the link. And we call it borrower link. And that's it. Now, one thing that's important, I have it in my habit to always control click on things to open them in a new tab, as you'll see. If you just click on this, it will take you here, but you can back into the report. One other thing you can do whenever you're adding links to reports is if you add this target equals underscore blank, and don't misspell blank. You can set it up so that page will automatically open in a new window, which I usually like to do, but I just had forgotten to do earlier. Any questions so far?
Not yet.
All right. So that's kind of the start. We can get a little bit fancier with what we do with these links. And part of that is due to the fact that Koha is persistent in a lot of these. These links that you have up here will always take you to the borrower number. We can use that to do some fancy things like take actions on borrowers. One of the things you'll note under more here for the patron, we have, oh, now I can't find it. And it may be what the renewal date is set to. Oh, renew patron. I just think I didn't see it there. If we look at this, I'm going to open a text editor just to put that link in there. Can't really zoom in on it so much. But that button over here to renew the patron is really just a link in Koha. We can take advantage of that because we can add into our report then this link to renew a patron and ooh, a fancy button to renew a patron. If we go back to our report and look, we are now talking about this part right here. Actually, let's start with this one. This is the same thing we saw before. Just as we did the borrower, the link to their details page, this is just a straight link to that registration page. In this instant, it has a side effect that if we click it, it's actually going to end up performing actions on that patron rather than just taking us to their page. So we can go ahead and try that out in the report. If I click here, it opens a new tab. And now we can see patron's account has been renewed until 7/29/2028. That's a long time. in a report like this, where it's a really reported statistics, that might not be useful, but I just kind of wanted to demonstrate that ability to go ahead and take those actions on people here. Since we're using HTML and we can kind of interpret whatever is here, we're not really limited to just having links in our things. We can actually make this a button. Now, what I did here was I went ahead and I made it a button and gave it an on-click action, which just executes JavaScript when we click on that. And what it does is it just sets the window location to go right to that borrower's renewal page. So we can do the same thing here and click this button. And again, they're renewed until 7/29/2028. They don't get more time for renewing them again today, although that's based on the renewal base period, I think.
Hey, Nick, we have a question.
Okay.
Root is asking, report with link. Is it possible to renew the patrons with a single button, which I think you just did? I think they were just one step ahead.
Is it possible to renew? Does she mean renew all the patrons?
Maybe that's.
Or do they mean renew
Yeah.
all the patrons?
And then while they're typing, could you just take that one line and maybe put it in the chat for people to see?
And I will supply this entire report at the end, but yeah, if people want to look at that one, that is just this.
Thank you.
And we'll put all of this in the blog post too, so everyone will have a like comprehensive list too.
To all attendees.
Thank you, Nick.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, if we want to be adventurous for a minute, we can, we can try something. Because this is what I was playing with. I didn't quite get this working before, but let's see. So Koha has some built-in CSS, which is pretty cool. And it does some interesting things. Now, I think this might rely on a JavaScript event, but we're going to try it. So right here, this link, this button, I should say, is really just a link that has this circ button class added to it. And I think that if we just take that, I could have probably just typed it in the time it took me to copy and paste it. This is how I work. Run a report. Did that save? I guess it did not work. All right, I tried to get too fancy. I flew too close to the sun. Ignore that bit. I'm going to take that out, but I can talk about it in another way here. So if we go back to our report, the next thing I was going to talk about with the CSS is over here in the due dates. So here is just a regular display of the due date. This is just getting the minimum due date from the patrons list. And I don't do anything fancy to it, just show it in the report. But next to it, I have this one here that is in red if the items are overdue. So you can see that Henry doesn't have anything overdue, so his is clean. This one's red. This makes it easier to see in your report, you know, who has overdues, what's going on with them, just visual cues, which can be nice. So all I did here was I used, I used an if statement, first of all. This checks if the date due is less than or equal to today. So either the books that they have are going to be due or they are overdue. If they are, I use concat again, and this time I just put around the date due this span class overdue and an ending span here. Now, how did I know to use that? If we look at, this is Edna's page, Edna's checkouts, we have this list of checkouts here. And the same thing is done on the checkouts page where the overdues are listed in red. If I inspect that element, I apologize to the inspector, I don't think I can zoom in on. But if you look real closely, or if you do this on your own system, you see it has a span class overdue right around that due date. If you look over here somewhere in the actual list, it shows you that there's CSS built into Koha that class overdue has color C00, which is dark red. And so adding that in the span, when I run my report, it just automatically takes care of that and adds it right in there. Cool stuff. It's hard when we don't have access to everybody talking back at me. I'm used to the crowd feedback. So if you can give me some oohs and ahs, Kelly, that would be perfect.
Love it. We're getting excited. You got a very cool from Kelly. And from Cab said, oh, ah.
I appreciate that everyone is willing to play along with me.
I should have left my camera on because my face was like super excited. I was like, because I would never guess that's where you got the red is going to circulation. I would never thought that. So.
Tips and tricks. Tips and tricks, Kelly. So building on that, I was going to show you there are other ways to add these styles to things in your report. So if you look closely here, I have the patron categories listed here in orange, green, and pink. Those are just colors that I knew, but you can make them be any color. And this is based on which category they are. So that in this list of overdues, you could see, hey, look, it's my staff who doesn't have overdues. And you can go to Henry's desk and you can like give him a pat on the back and be like, way to be a good example. Or you could go to this teacher and be like, Mr. Ballard, your books are overdue. It's just, again, a nice visual cue, which I find useful in these reports. So there are a couple ways to do this. The first way I did it here was I used a MySQL case statement. What the case statement does is it checks the category code. It's sort of like a big if statement or a bunch of if statements smushed together. So we check the category code. When it's S, then we do a concat again, just like we've done before, and this time span style color equals green. So we're defining right in the HTML itself what we're going to do to this, what color we're going to make it. And we put the category code. So you see we've got S, P, T, T. If I change this to blue, now the staff is blue. Now you'll notice that this other column did not change because I did that one in a slightly different way. What's nice about doing it this first method is that you have full control. This is like tied into this report directly. You know it's only going to affect these things. Great. You may want to add some more universal things like this to your reports and be able to reuse these kind of tricks and always have the same colors available. You may pick CSS colors that you don't remember the codes for. You can actually use here in the CSS, you can use color codes and sort of other things. There are places online that will help you what colors are allowed and how to set them. But if we didn't want to have all of this code, if we had like 20 different categories, we didn't want to always have our report have a list of all of our categories and what colors. We're going to do something more generic here. So this time we have a span, but we're putting class equals category underscore and then concatenating in the category code and then displaying it as normal. So if we go look at the HTML here, if you look at this one has that color orange specified right in it. But this one, there we go, doesn't have a color specified. It just says this category PT. What I've done then is in our administration screen under user CSS, I went ahead and added CSS that specifies that when you see that .category underscore PT, color it orange. So if I change this one here to blue, then I can rerun this report. And now this is blue. What's nice about this then is if we're using this in a bunch of reports and we want to make a change to how we've styled it, we want to make it bold, we want to change the color, do whatever, we can change it in one place and have it affect every report out there that we run in the system.
We say mind blown.
Ooh.
Nick, does the color change, does only affects in the reports when you add it to the CSS, or is it going to affect when you see those patrons in the patron detail?
It's not going to affect them in the patron detail. Well, so if you do it this way, where it's hard-coded directly in here, this is inline style. Inline style is never going to leak anywhere else. When we do it here, if there's anywhere else in Koha where we had category underscore in the category, it would affect it there. That's sort of why you can get a little more specific. Like we could say report. Whoa, let's not type crazy. Okay, report underscore category underscore. That's a little less likely to show up anywhere in Koha. The other thing that we can do is, and this is more of a general Koha CSS jQuery tip, every page in Koha has a unique body ID. So in this one, it is this rep guided report start. If we copy that and put that into our CSS, and let's make sure that still works. It didn't. I think I need a space there. Okay, so that still works. What that has done now, though, is said, this CSS only applies to category PT on this very specific page. So if you are worried about any of those like leaking to affect other things, yeah, you can go ahead and get a little more specific with that. Cool. What did I not cover? Okay. So the other thing that this report does is over here in the barcodes. So sometimes when you're looking at a report of overdues or something, you may actually look at one of these and say, hey, I wish I had more information about that, or I have another report. Adding links in CSS, sorry, there's a question in the chat. A report with a link, adding links in CSS, does the performance change a lot, or is the response time not much different? CSS should not affect your performance. That's just on page load. And the report itself, all we're really doing when we add these concats with the links is adding text to the report. So the report will be slightly bigger in terms of content, but that shouldn't affect you in how fast it runs or how fast you download it. If you're running a report with 10,000, let's say 100,000 pieces of information, something that is slow to load already, this is going to make it a little bit bigger. And it will, what it really comes down to in terms of performance, where it affects you, I should say, is going to be here. The problem with all of the stuff that we've done is that when we're adding this to reports, we are adding it to the content of the pages. And if we download this as a CSV, like what other things are in my downloads folder? Move that over there. And we open this up. All of this HTML code is going to be in your report, which a lot of times is not what you want. It's unfortunate. We don't really have a good fix for that yet. What I generally suggest you do in that case is, if you're going to do that, just go ahead and I can go back here and edit the report. So for something like this renew link, I would, if you needed that information, what I would do is add a second line of it that is just In this case, it's just the borrower number is the only information we have there. But a second clean version of this button that doesn't have any code around it. A better example is here. So we have barcode simple, and that's what I'd probably do if I were downloading a report. I'd have barcode simple, and then I'd have the one with the line breaks in it, because Excel does not like the line breaks as much as it does regular commas. So yeah, unfortunately, that's the way that one works. Andrew and I have been talking about ways that we can try to filter those out on the download or things that we can do, but so far this is what we've got. So back to where I was. So these links here, are the ones I hadn't talked about yet. Sometimes when you're running the reports, you get some pieces of information, but then you kind of want to see more about them. You may say like, you know, I pull up this borrower, now I kind of want to see what other checkouts they've had or things like that. In this case, what I did was I said, okay, I have these barcodes here. I'm curious to see what the circulation history on these items is. Like, it's overdue, how popular is it in general? And so what I've actually done is if we go back to reports, I have a third report here called statistics for item. All this report does is, thank you, Kelly. Good reaction. It takes an item number, and that wasn't the right item number, but it takes an item number and it just gives you a blank listing of the statistics. Now you notice, you know, run for item, I had to remember that it was 973. That's not the most accessible way to do this. So what I've done too is I've said, okay, let me just build that into my other report. So if I click on this chess1 here, it takes me to that report run with that parameter directly. This is one of the cool—
report in a report? A report in a report?
I heard you like reports, so I put reports in your reports so you could report on your reports. And again, this is just, all of these boil down really to being the same trick of knowing the links within Koha and concatenating them together. In this case, we got a little combination of several things because we have the link to the reports, we have a group concat, and we have a separator with a BR so that they're all on their own line, which I just think is super cool. It is funny, I get real excited about all of these things. Like, I actually do. Like, writing this report today to demonstrate all this was super fun. But it's a good way to do it.
That was a big hit.
Yeah. So we've got reports within reports, we've got styling reports. One other thing I wanted to show, and this is a tip from Andrew, I got to give him full credit. When we go to run this report, so you notice we've got the collection code and we've got this all drop down. If any of you aren't aware out there, when you are asking for data in reports, down here is where we ask for the collection code. You can use this pipe and you can put in certain keywords to specify that you want a drop-down list of that information. Item types, collection codes,
Shelving locations.
Shelving location, branches. There's a bunch of them defined, and they're actually all defined. Never forget that over here you have the Koha report library and the Koha database schema. If we go to the report library, is it runtime variables? No, runtime parameters. Authorized value category, branches, item types, date, or category code. This is one I think that people overlook a lot of times, that you can use any authorized value category in Koha to generate these dropdowns, which means that you can create your own unique dropdowns in Koha. And one other thing to mention before I get to that is just this all keyword down here. Where did it go? This is a new feature. I think it's in 1905 at this point. Yeah. It was highlighted in the Monday Minutes. If you are not watching Monday Minutes, you are missing out. Kelly and Jay-Z at their finest every Monday at, I don't know, 8 a.m. You should do them live. Come on, guys. Give the people what they want.
One day we'll get there.
Anyway, if you add this all, whatever you're using here, item type branches, it will give you this selector of all, which will just provide a wildcard in the code. So as long as we have use like instead of equals here, you can use that all and you can get a list of everything. But that wildcard is kind of how we do this next trick. So if we run the report again, you notice we have adult types, all juvenile, juvenile book, juvenile DVD. So if we click on juvenile book, you'll see we just get Perl 1, 2, and 3. This book happens to all be juvenile book types. If we run it again and we get juvenile DVD, all of these, this is the attic book, attic 1, 2, and 3, all juvenile DVD. And if we go to authorized values, these are all set up in the collection codes. So you can see we've got JBook and JDVD. Now a nice thing, and this really works if your library is kind of set up this way, that all of your juvenile categories are going to start with this J. That allows us when we run the report to have this thing here where we do all juvenile and run it, and we get both the juvenile books and the juvenile DVDs in our report. How did we do it, you may ask, Kelly? That's what your face said. We created a new authorized value, collections. In here, we were able to define J %. In SQL, percent is the wildcard function. This lets us say that in that dropdown, we want to be able to select anything that has J % in it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Nick, is this in 1911 or currently we can do this? In
You can
1905?
do this in any version.
Man, we need to do one just on this. I didn't know you could do that.
This is huge. I'm like writing it down.
All credit for this goes to Andrew, because I was like, what cool thing should I show? And he's like, show this cool thing. And I said, okay, calm down. He was like, show it. He everybody. He was fine. So that lets us get both at the same time. And if you inspect the element, which if you're going to be doing any of this, a lot of it, I didn't mention this specifically, but F12 in most browsers will bring up this kind of console down here, and right-clicking on anything will give you this neat little drop-down where you can choose inspect element. I don't know if you can see my drop-downs on this share. Okay, good. Sometimes my cursor comes across funny, so I wasn't sure. Inspect element will take us right to that piece of the code, and then we can use the little carrots to expand it. And we can see the value is J%. If we run it with that too, I forget that you don't always see this now, but you can always look at the SQL code, which will show you what was passed in as a parameter here. It will replace all the places where we asked Koha for a parameter with what it actually received, so that you can see how it's using it. So we've got C code like J. Now, go ahead.
There was a question from Lizette. When you were in that authorized value category, there was one that was FIC, pipe. Yeah.
Okay.
How would you do multiple options that didn't all start with the same letter? Is that what you did with that pipe one?
Yeah. So that, if I try to run that right now, it's not going to work. So if I go ahead and select adult types, I'm going to get nothing. I don't know of a way that I can do it with the current setup, but you can make these work. And what I'm going to do is go in here and I'm going to get rid of this all, because all is really set up only to work with like. If you're going to use the all option, you have to use like here. But I'm going to go ahead and use rlike, which is a different MySQL function for regex like. That lets us pass regex options into here, which is pretty cool. That means now if I run this report and I use adult types, you notice the all option is gone. I can hit run report. And now I'm just getting the chess book, which happens to be, one of these is FIC and one of these is reference. I should have put a link to this book so that I could show you that, but I will just to verify. Search the catalog for chess.
You got a mind blown there.
There was a link.
It didn't go here.
Oh.
So one of these is in fiction, one of these is nonfiction. So just to prove, because none of you believe me, I have to prove it. You're all like, he's making it up.
Yeah, right. We believe anything you tell us, Nick.
So what that lets you do is kind of put this in here with a pipe between them. In regex, that's an or signifier, so that this is the collection code is fic or is nonfiction. Now, regex does have options for wildcards too. We just would have to change this if we're going to use it in this case to be like j.star. And that will say anything that begins with J and has anything after it. And now that means if we run this report again and choose the juvenile, that should still work, and it does. Additionally, even though I said, now we had to switch to using R-like here, which meant that we lost that all option, since we're building our own kind of specialized authorized value category, we can go ahead and put in one here that is just .star, which is going to be anything, and call it all. And now if I run this report again, oop, I did not name that well. Why did I not like that? I don't know why it's not saying all there. Maybe I ran it before I saved it. I'm just going to try that. Well, it's working, but I have no idea why that is not coming through there. I apologize, everyone. I am confused about that. And yes, Lizette, fic and fic is how you do options that don't start with the same letter. You just have to use regex like instead of the regular like. She stepped away, so she missed that part. Were you saying something, Kelly?
Just wow. Still, I'm on the wow. R-like. I haven't even heard of R-like before, so.
Now, I was playing around. If there's no questions about this right now, I'll move on to a different thing that I did. This was just me playing this morning. Andrew said it was a little bit JavaScript heavy, but I do think it's really cool. If we go back to reports, I mentioned before how when we do this download, you get all this kind of like junk in your report. And that's a little bit messy, and we don't necessarily like that. So I've got this other report here, just called Vanilla Report. It's just a list of biblio numbers and authors. Nothing fancy here. What I did is we can actually, in Koha, since we have the ability to inject user.js onto any page, I went ahead and kind of wrote this fancy block of code over here, which I will share with you. I'll try to explain as much of it as I can, but what this is going to do is if we go ahead and run our vanilla report again, you'll see that these have turned into links. The report code, still simple. If we go to download it, we're only going to get the information that we want. But I've added links to these. So if I click here, this is a link over to the biblio. So we can get straight from the report to the bibliographic information. And this one is actually a link to search for the author in Koha. So we can pull up a list of these books, and then we can do a search to find more books by that author in Koha. So what this is a pretty large block of jQuery. The first part of it here just makes sure that we are on the reports results page. It's looking at the URL to say, If we're here with phase equals run, that means we're at the report results. The next thing it does is it looks within the page to find out if there's a table header that says title. Then it looks if there's a title header called, or table header, biblio number. And then it does the same thing for author. Then we go through each row of the report. We get the biblio number row. We say, do we have a biblio number row? If we do, if it's greater than -1, then go ahead, set the link text to link ID, set the link column to the biblio number row. It also checks if we have a title row. If we have a title row, it's going to set the text to the link to the title. I'll show you this in a second. And then it's just kind of doing the same thing down here. This is really similar to the concat. We're just finding a thing in the page and adding stuff to it. So the way that I built this one, I thought it was kind of fun because right now we've got biblio number and author, and the biblio number is the link. If I go ahead and edit this and add in a title column, the biblio number is not the link anymore, the title is the link. And it uses the title link text to like take us to the book. So I'm really happy with that. This opens up a world of possibilities. I have not played with this before, but I like the idea of being able to link to the, add links to your report with everything. Once you've got this kind of structure here that we've done, you can actually use this to add CSS, to add spans, to do anything you want to your reports. And you can base it all on the name of the column, which means that you could do things like have title or have title underscore link, which would then, only if you see title link, make it a link to the title and do things like that. And that's really, yeah, Kelly.
When you were in your intranet user JS system preference, there were some hazard signs.
That's just telling me that I shouldn't use it because I used let, which I can just change that to var. That's really just something that I picked up from Lucas. That's the only reason I do that. Because he is a whiz with the jQuery, and so I tend to believe what he does is a good practice, and I try to copy him. This one down here is just a line break. So what I did was, generally you would type this way. You would have these all kind of smushed together, and then if we widen this out, I can't do it on the screen, but here, let's. So you'd have a really long text. I didn't like that because I feel like that makes it hard to read. So I just put this line break in there, even though it tells me that's bad form. I was like, nah, it makes it easier for everyone to read, just so it doesn't go all the way across the screen.
Well, no, I just wondered if those hazard marks were new.
Oh, yes. As you know, I work on master most of the time, Kelly. So I believe that we've added JS linting to the code mirror preferences. So this is, if anyone's familiar with the advanced cataloging editor, Rancor, it uses a editor called Code Mirror. That editor was backported to a lot of the system preferences and other places in Koha. I think that's in 1911, if not 1905. But all it does is it kind of adds these line breaks. It shows you a little more. And so we added in code that actually checks your JavaScript and tells you if there are problems. So I think like if I go here and put that, yeah, you'll notice now I get expected an identifier because I didn't close this paren anywhere. If I just do that, those all go away.
Oh, that's super helpful.
Yeah, so it's trying to make sure that if you are breaking everything with your JavaScript, Koha's going to give you a hand in finding those breaks and fixing them.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's really that's what I had for today. These are a lot of fun tricks that you can use, and I'll make sure that all of these get put into a blog post or somewhere so that they're accessible to you. I will at least mention I didn't get one together to show you guys today because this is a thing that I could talk about all day, but I'd like to mention these. Whenever you save a report in Koha, you get this JSON URL. If the report is not public, this URL only works on the staff side. You have to be logged in as staff to use it. But if you go ahead and click on any of these ever, you get no results because it needs parameters. This one will give me results. Now I have a JSON plugin installed so that all my JSON looks pretty. But this is what it shows you. It shows me that I'm getting these report results back. If you are a whiz with the JavaScript, if you know what you are doing, you can use this link to go ahead and pull your reports data and do stuff with it in JavaScript. This is a trick that the developers and I try not to use because it can be so easily abused to pull lots of information to other areas of Koha and to trigger alerts and do all sorts of interesting things based on reports. But it's a fun trick that I do like to mention if you really want to get your hands dirty and play with some JavaScript. Cool. What's that you pasted in there, Jesse?
Am I unmuted? Pascal Library uses one that I think does it. That's not the right link. It's like statistics, maybe. PascalLibraries.org statistics, I think it is. And they use JSON to push out information from reports, like to show the number of circs that they have so patrons can look at all that information. I was just trying to think of the library I know uses it.
I mean, really, if anybody is using Coverflow out there, that is how Coverflow works. Coverflow actually uses that JSON URL to get your report data and build out that list of books. That's why you have to have an accompanying report with your Coverflow. So those are the kind of things that you can build with it, with the caution that when you make this report public, anyone can hit that URL and see the result. So if there's patron data there, please don't make them public.
Good caution.
Yeah, I like to warn people, you know.
Okay, well, that's it. If anyone else has questions, we'd be happy to take them. If not, we've recorded. You've got some thanks in there.
All right.
Look at Barbara, one of the most exciting presentations I've ever seen. Ooh, yeah, Nick.
Just wait till tomorrow.
I know.
Yeah, tomorrow is Pearl bracelet. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks,
Thank
Nick.
you.
Thank you, Nick.
And Evan asked, how do we get the codes? We will get those into a blog post and put them somewhere that everyone can see them very soon.
I've already been copying and pasting them in, so I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Copy and paste whatever's left.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye, thanks.